So let's get into some kind of specifics, some tactics, strategies. What have you all implemented at your organizations that's been successful in generating new revenue? And have you heard of anything, or are you implementing anything that's particularly innovative? And Harvey, I'd like to start with you on that one.
Thanks, John. Well, first and foremost, it was important for us as a leadership team to make sure our associates and team, they were safe and in a good environment to be able to work flexibly, and that they had the technology to telecommute. And so that was the first thing that we wanted to make sure everyone was in a good place as a group. And what we actually found was that folks were able to be more productive and their activities were streamlined, being that they didn't have to, sit an hour or two in traffic. And so a lot of the activities were really coming at a fast clip because folks were set up, they were in a good spot, and were able to continue on their work. A few other things we did: we established the COVID-19 Critical Needs Fund. I spoke about this earlier, in which, we put the needs out there in the way of specialized equipment our caregivers would need to take us through this trying time. We also established an associate emergency fund. And so for associates who had hardships, whether they had a spouse or a partner who was, out of work, MedStar seeded that account, and us as a philanthropy group, we actively raised funds to help. We tried new ideas, such as we did a direct response to folks for COVID-19, and we received a very favorable response, and folks really stepped up during this time to help us. And that's something that was fairly unorthodox for us as an organization to do, but it was, definitely the right time to try a new strategy. And then other things, as far as our Race to Beat Cancer, which is a signature event here in the DC area, we decided to do that virtually this year. And so far, we're getting a tremendous amount of traction for that event in honor of us supporting our Cancer Institute. And things like virtual ribbon cuttings for newly named spaces. We still wanted to be able to steward our donors who graciously gave these gifts to name spaces and create renovations within our hospitals. And so we're able to create those type of moments for our donors. And then, as well as meeting with our donors virtually via Zoom and having our physician champions being a part of a lot of those discussions, we're finding that some of our doctors are actually doing a really good job of, being able to share screens on some of their research and talk through it. And so donors are able to get more of an under the hood approach and look at their work, which is actually working out extremely well. So those are some of the things that we've implemented here in light of this pandemic to try to continue to raise awareness around philanthropy.
Great, thank you very much. And Glen, what are you seeing from your membership? What type of new revenue generating ideas are you hearing? Anything innovative that stands out to you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I'll tell you that one of the first things that we did was really take a good look at all of our revenue streams, ours at the Center for Nonprofit Advancement, and then checking in with our members to see what the distribution of foundation revenue, corporation revenue, individuals' earned income, and government dollars was, to understand which areas we could ratchet up. We started with being in touch with all of our donors and investors. In our case, that even meant our members. It took time, but reaching out to try to get a call to understand who's out there and how they're out there if they're not at their offices anymore, to make contact. We then really looked closely at how we could recreate some of what was happening in person in a virtual world, if you would. So a lot of the training and professional development that we'd done in person, we quickly moved to this platform, in most cases in Zoom. And then looked at how behaviors were changing. The attention span on Zoom being a little different than that in person. So breakout rooms and polling and using some of that technology also helped us. One innovative strategy for some of our members has been moving fundraising events to this platform, believe it or not. We've come up with a quick 30-minute fundraising event. We have individual board members inviting out their networks and peers. And in 30 minutes, you're hearing about the organization. You're seeing some video, which puts you in the organization. And you're understanding what's going on and how you can help. So our recommendation is just to get in front of it. talk to donors, let them know what you're up to, and not leave it for them to assume how you're doing, but share how you're doing and how they can help.
It's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Tim, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I think maybe Glenn, I might have experienced one of those events last night. I joined a local grassroots Washington DC based Life Pieces event last night that they did. It was a live, they were leveraging Zoom, and they had kind of live MCs, they had the staff. You were learning about their mission, you were seeing it. They also had kind of pre-prepared content to share with everyone. And then the whole while, they were making the ask, right? So they were using that time to really make the ask to the people that were joining. They had several hundred people on the call and on the event. So it was fantastic. So I think we're seeing more and more of that from our partners, but it's all about cultivation, right? So whether you're in the for-profit or the not-for-profit space, how are you continuing to connect with your donors? How do you create a deeper relationship? And so, another great thing that we've seen is some of our nonprofit partners are doing town halls where they're using a Zoom or some type of technology to get everybody on board, give them an update of what's going on every single day at the organization, make the ask, hear from the frontline staff and the leaders. But that's really been what we've seen been beneficial to some of our nonprofit partners.
Awesome, thank you. And Tal, I'll let you answer that too. What are you guys doing that's innovative? What are you seeing out there to generate new revenue?
So, I think it's the things that we have done ourselves have been hit on already. Virtual events. We're also, as a community-based organization, shifting a lot of our programming to virtual. And frankly, it's a learning process. Someone asked on the chat, whether these events are well attended, and I think they're as well attended as you're able to get word out about them, and I think share what it is you're trying to achieve through the event. I don't think people are just going to show up just to show up, unless you have a really specific goal in mind and a targeted ask for participation. I think we're in a unique place in terms of how we're looking at fundraising, and I saw someone in the chat talked about elevating the awareness of small businesses, and I think whether you're a small business or mid or large size business, what we believe is that a brand like ours can be a shoulder-to-shoulder platform to express the good work of corporate citizens, while also elevating the philanthropic needs of our community at the same time. And I think there's a common way of doing philanthropy that corporates have employed for quite some time now, and we're really trying to change the face of sports philanthropy, the way professional sports teams do philanthropy as shoulder-to-shoulder partners. So a corporate partner of ours isn't just paying for market recognition for their brand, but also to show people what their brand stands for in relation to the community. And I think there's lots of ways to do that creatively. And we're open to good ideas, because like I said earlier, ultimately the goal is to build a culture of philanthropy in this region that benefits the residents of this region. And if we can be a conduit for corporate citizens to do that, then we certainly want to. And I think necessity is the mother of invention, right? So we are accelerating the way we are doing things as a result of this climate. And the fact that the traditional ways of doing business just are kind of out the door for now.
Yeah. You mentioned, I saw the comment from the audience about events too. So I was going to ask that question is, events are a big part of many nonprofits' opportunity to raise funds from the business community. How are nonprofits tackling that challenge now? And Tim, what are you seeing out there? You have a platform that directly gets involved with events. What are you seeing? And and to the point of our audience member, what's the engagement been like? As opposed to in person, as opposed to virtual.
Yeah, so I'll piggyback on what Harvey said earlier. One of the other ways that organizations are generating revenue is really going virtual, right? So whether they have virtual events, not just the Zoom, but really those in-person events that happen, whether it's galas, I know there's organizations out there that support really full production of galas online now, but in addition to that, what are the walks and the runs and those type of activities that happened in the spring and the summer and the fall, quite honestly, that are either being canceled or postponed or being moved virtual. So we're working with our nonprofit partners to try to give them a tool to do that. And so whether it's Catholic Charities or the Y of Central Maryland that are leveraging our technology to reach their donors, to still run their event, to generate that kind of peer-to-peer fundraising and continue to support their mission. So that's what we're seeing right now, John.
Gotcha, great. And Glenn, how about you? What are you seeing out there as far as events are concerned? Obviously, a lot of them are going virtual. Some folks are, canceling them all, outright or postponing them until 2021. What are you seeing there? And, how are nonprofits in your group tackling that?
Yeah, I will just say quickly, for our organizations, canceling is not an option. It's really pivoting to find another way to generate that same level of revenue. So yes to the virtual. Social distancing is important. We've seen that happening with volunteer initiatives, which is a really good fundraiser. The best way to get an individual donor involved and engaged is for them to see and experience the work firsthand. So being clear on what they're doing for our personal protective equipment and how they are addressing the need for space is something else that we have seen work really well. And then from a virtual standpoint, it has gotten very elaborate. There have been toasts virtually where there's the same bottle of wine that goes to every participant. The toast is happening, people are sharing an experience, and a few other situations like that. We saw a tour that was in vehicles while everyone was on a freeconferencecall.com. There was one person talking them through what it was that they were seeing. So just getting really creative on how you engage your group of your population of donors has been a key and common theme.
Yeah, and how are you addressing, those large corporate donors that are, spending anywhere from $1,000 to $50,000 on, sponsoring events, in their point of view is they want to have that, kind of networking interaction that events always have. Are you seeing that companies are not as open to sponsoring virtual events as they were before? Some of the nonprofits I work with we've seen that.
Yeah.
And how do you get corporations to, really buy into the mission and not just the networking piece, but the mission but then also how do you do some kind of give back on the business development side for them?
Yeah, it's been actually some of the same around allowing those corporations to provide the welcome and to share a little bit about their corporate social responsibility. If that Zoom meeting has 500 people, it's the same impact as the event. The good news is we have been able to express for corporations more of a national and in some cases international opportunity to be visible because anyone can click the link. Sharing their brand on the invite as well as during the event and again afterward provides a bit more. And then identifying the demographic so you can help them to understand how that group actually speaks to their target market has been just as good for us. So we think there is an opportunity here. While you can't do in person, there's less travel, there's less incidental cost. So just looking at the expenses as well as the revenue and finding a way to make those two ends meet.
That's great, yeah. And Harvey, I'd like to ask you the same thing. How is MedStar handling events? How are you tackling that challenge? I know you mentioned doing some, kind of room namings and, things like that. Could you comment a little bit on the event side?
Yeah, on the event side, as I mentioned, we have one of our signature events. We try not to be event heavy in our activities. We really want to keep, as I mentioned earlier, focused on a personalized gratitude model. However, we've been in partnership with the Four Seasons here in Washington, D.C. For over the past 20 years or so to support our Cancer Institute. Unfortunately, obviously, due to COVID, that was canceled as a live event. However, to just address an earlier question you had, John, we do still have sponsors who are very interested in the mission. And so we try to highlight the mission of what we're doing. Yes, it is a great business development opportunity for a lot of the corporate partners. However, we've been doing this for 20 plus years. We have folks who are really invested in what we're doing. We were able to give them some visibility through emails and or, one of the local magazines gave us a full page ad, a modern luxury magazine, and was able to prominently highlight a lot of our, key sponsors. And so we're just being as creative as we possibly can throughout this time in light of social distancing, but still keeping, very focused on the mission that we need to achieve. And what we're finding is that folks have been very flexible and adaptable, amenable and accepting of that, and very understandable. And as Tal mentioned earlier, we just take a tactful approach in our conversations. And so far, we're finding some really good success with that.
That's great. Thank you. And Tal, could you talk a little bit about events?
Well, so yeah, I mean, the lack of in-person events has hurt us. And, I'd be lying if I said it didn't. We have an annual gala that, I think our supporters are genuine in wanting to be there to support the mission of the organization, but it's a rare event where you're in a room with the entire Washington Nationals baseball team and what this year would have been the World Series champion Washington Nationals baseball team. So that is near to impossible to replace. And there are people who, corporations included, who are, interested in supporting the organization, but they like the fact that they get to sit at a dinner table with Juan Soto. So that's hard. You can't really replace that in the virtual environment. And admittedly, we're subject to some of the challenging circumstances between the players and owners and dealing with that. So, we're trying to just kind of remove the variables.
Yeah.
And frankly, while it sounds like a lot of people have already been organizing and pivoting to virtual events, we're taking a little bit of time to make sure that we can offer our supporters something that feels like a good substitute. Not easy to do, of course, but we are planning to do some virtual events at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall. And, again, talking about me being able to learn from this call, I mean, it's helpful to know how people have done that so that we can have effective virtual events. I don't think there's really an option. And, look, DC is rife with fundraising events. People have to go to them. Organizations have to support them. I think there's something kind of appealing about a future where not all of these events require putting on a tux and spending 5 hours outside of your home, to be able to support an organization and engage virtually. I mean, we are learning about new ways to do things that could be new business as usual after the crisis is behind us.
Thank you. Yeah. And I know we're can't believe we're running out of time already. I want to get to a couple questions from the audience. So one, which is interesting, in which areas or gifts are you seeing more gains? Individual giving, corporate, foundations, bequests, stock gifts, annual gifts? Would one of you like to answer that?
I'll touch on that briefly. So we are seeing an uptick in individual gifts now. At the start of the pandemic, not so much. And I think that was due to the uncertainty around what people's individual companies and corporations would do. We have seen a great deal of support from foundations and government. There's so many COVID-19 emergency response grant initiatives, new ones from local government. And obviously we talked federal funds as well. So individuals, foundations, and government would be the areas. I would encourage all of us to continue to review our earned income approach and see what tweaks we can do there to ensure that those funds are ratcheted up and to continue with the innovation around events to bring in more individuals.
Gotcha. Harvey, where are you guys seeing gains?
Yeah, I think our data pretty much mirrors what we saw in the most recent Giving USA report. So, I mean, a tremendous amount of our philanthropic support is coming from individuals and family foundations. We are, seeing some corporate support. However, the bread and butter of what we've seen is really, we've had a lot of, individuals really step up. Obviously, we have not been shy. We've been tactfully, approaching our individuals and folks who have supported us in the past. And so I would have to say that has been the bread and butter of what we've seen. And again, we've seen some significant gifts from some, private family foundations that have really helped us out in some substantial ways.
That's great. Yeah, one other question was, because, of COVID, a lot of tension is towards healthcare and COVID-related nonprofits. But those folks not tied to that, how do you attract the attention of donors and keep the urgency associated with their own mission at this time and not just on the health side? Tal, how would you answer that?
It's a good question. I mean, if I'm being honest, it's hard to figure out an area of giving that doesn't somehow relate to COVID. It is pervasive in everything that's happening across the board right now. I think there are some aspects of nonprofit work that are directly related in some, or feel directly related, like food insecurity and human service needs. But I would say that, generally speaking, people are wanting to be engaged. They're wanting to connect. I think the quarantine has, cause for, and we see this unfortunately in lots of ways playing out in our country. People are longing for some sort of interaction and some sort of, connection to something that they care about. So, we're not trying to do too many of these types of things, but we want to give people an opportunity to give to things that they care about, whether it's pediatric cancer research, which we supported in partnership with Adam Eaton last week, or other causes that might be germane to what people care about, but don't feel like they're just in need because of the crisis. All nonprofits are suffering as a result of the crisis, whether it's because of fundraising or the ability to operate programs. And so I think making that compelling ask and making sure that your constituency understands that what you are doing is important to the people that you are doing it for. I don't think it's a problem to get people to realize that's important too, even if it doesn't feel directly connected to COVID.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, and we're about out of time, but I did want to ask each of you to spend 30 seconds. And what's one piece of advice that you would give our audience, one takeaway? What would that be? And Tim, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I wanted to thank Harvey and Glen and Tal for the work that you guys are doing in the community, your organizations, and then everyone that joined the call today and all the good work that everyone's doing to support one another and the community and the causes. So big shout out to everyone. And the one thing I would say is, hey, let us know if Givhero can help. Leverage our platform. We can support at the individual level, individual peer-to-peer fundraising. We can support at the corporate level, running employee well-being programs for social impact. And we can partner with our nonprofits in running virtual events. So let us know how we can help you. Reach out to us. We want to help. We want to have a positive social impact.
Great. Thank you. Tal, what's one piece of advice? 30 seconds.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm in a position to give advice.
Oh, yes, you are.
But what I would say is that we want to engage with every single person who is part of this conversation. So please follow us on social media. We're at Nats for Good with the number 4. And pay attention to what we're doing and how we're doing it, and give us ideas. We won't take all of them, of course, we can't. But I think, my piece of advice is stay engaged, be direct. If you believe in the work that you're doing, don't be afraid to ask people to support it. I think that should always be the case, but especially now.
Hey, thank you. Awesome. Great advice. Glenn, how about you? Piece of advice for everybody.
30 seconds, couple quick things. One, I'll just remind us, no money, no mission. If we don't have it, we can't get it done. And that people give to people. So let's get out in front of this and accept this challenge. Let's ask for more money and ask more often, and not make assumptions for our donors. Let's let them tell us why they can or if they can't. The last thing I'll say is that we have to get ahead of this. Being silent and assuming that things are going to be the way they were is not the right approach, because the assumption will be worse than what you're currently facing. So tell donors what you're doing differently, how they can help you, what it costs, and push forward.
Love it. Great advice. Thank you. And Harvey, how about you?
Thanks, John. I'll take a different slant on this one, and my advice is to encourage folks to stay motivated and attend to your physical and mental well-being. A lot of us are working from home, and it's challenging. It could seem all-consuming. So make sure you're taking care of yourself first. Even before you open your emails, compartmentalize your day, read, meditate, work out. These activities will help you keep your mind clear and break up your day. After this regimen, focus on the positive change that you can go out and create in the world. And start by building some momentum for your day by perhaps calling a current donor just as a thank you call to just warm up your prospecting for that day. So thank you very much for having me on, and I encourage you all to reach out to me if you have any questions, and thanks so much for allowing me to be on the panel.
Yeah, thank you so much, Harvey. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Tal. Tim, thank you. And Tim, if you wouldn't mind sharing that slide with everyone's information. Lastly, I'd like to, again, thank our partners, the Center for Nonprofit Advancement. Glenn, thank you. Would love to thank Maryland Nonprofits and Connolly and Associates. I want to thank our audience for participating. Got some great questions. Sorry we're going to get to everybody, but we really appreciate you participating in the poll and the Q&A and the chat. And lastly, we're just going to keep it open for the next, 5 to 10 minutes, answer some more questions. And if you want to chat amongst yourself, network amongst yourselves, we'd love that too. So thank you again for everybody for participating and being on today. So panelists, so thank you again, and thanks for sticking around a little bit. I'm going to go through the chat here and look at some other questions that we could look at. And if there was any ones that you all see in there that you want to address, please speak up.
Hey, John, I just want to say thanks for moderating.
Absolutely.
Running the show today.
I love the topic. I love, and I love the topic, and it's so important. I really appreciate being a part of this. So thank you.
For sure. I saw one question or one comment in there. Tim, what was the organization that you saw last night? It was Life Pieces to Masterpieces, based in DC.
I think I saw a note here as well asking about our Maryland counterpart. It's Maryland Nonprofits also sponsoring this event.
Let's look at
lots of activity in the chat.
Yeah, there's lots of great stuff in here.
Great comment.
Oh, one question was about for kind of startups, startup nonprofits. What's the best advice there? It's a tough time to be a startup from nonprofit or for profit. Any advice there?
Yeah, really tough time for startup. I think the advice is the same, to do tons of research to make sure that there's not an organization that's similar that you might partner with to serve as a program of until further notice. But if you must start up in this challenging time, really understand what differentiates you from everything else that's going on in that critical service you're providing, and jump in and really be in touch with the population that you will intend to serve.
It's great advice. Yeah, I like this other one too. Like, what are you planning for end of year? How are you planning for end of year differently? I'm having those conversations with a couple of people. It's, end of July, getting into August, and we're starting to think about that, Giving Tuesday and end of year giving. What has anything changed, or what has changed with you guys in planning for that?
Well, our fiscal year ended officially June 30th, and so now our clock reset July 1st, and so we're in the process of planning out for what this year is going to look like. This year, we determined that we were going to still boldly go out and pursue our work plans accordingly. Granted, the court is still out on what's going to happen. The jury's still out on what's going to happen with respect to philanthropy, just overall and across the board. But by no means are we going to let that inhibit our activities. We're going to continue to reach out, to our physicians and caregivers here, and really educate them on the importance of listening to the language of gratitude that their patients might use, in which we just want to be really, pay a lot of attention to that piece of it and do what we can to achieve the very ambitious goals that we have. We think it's possible. Again, healthcare is top of mind nationally and globally. So we think that we're in a really good position to be ambitious for this year.
Great, thank you. Would anybody else like to comment on that?
I'll say that we're going to push push harder. We're starting to think about what that end of year campaign will look like now, and also encouraging our members and the nonprofits we support to do the same. We're putting ourselves in the donors' shoes, and we're thinking about what people really need at this time. It's important. It's interesting. I saw so much in the chat box about these auctions. And I think if you think about it, everyone's rushing out to make their home environment better, the exercise bikes, the rubber above ground pools. But looking at those items now that we can incorporate in that auction, and asking and thinking about what a holiday sort of gifting of service might look like. So pushing harder, asking for more.
That's a cool idea. Tal, how about you? Anything different you're planning for end of year?
We're trying to do all of our fundraising before the election. So, but honest, I mean, that's tongue in cheek to some degree, but I'm really being serious. I think that, you know, we can't predict what the fourth quarter is going to bring from a public health standpoint, from a political standpoint, what kind of turmoil that will create. And so, you know, I saw someone in the chat ask about, you know, how do you get your board members to do more asking? And I feel like a broken record, but be direct. I mean, if someone has joined your board, and they've gone through the vetting process to become a board member, then they both believe in your mission and are in a position to be helpful. And if they're not going to act now, then when are they going to act? So, you know, I think it's important to give them specific targets with goals to achieve. But I think now is the time to activate your board, get them out making asks now, and, you know, do the hard work to provide them with plug and play materials that they don't have to do any of the work other than press send on an email or make a phone call and read some talking points. But I think doing that now, you know, normally July, August are slow fundraising times. This is the time to really accelerate your efforts, in my opinion.
Yeah. Hey, you bring up a good subject. I mean, engaging the board, and could talk for an hour about that. I sit on the board of BVM, Business Volunteers Maryland, and we did a thing last year where we put each board member on a team. We had 5 teams, and all of us picked names for the team. It was a very competitive thing, and the goal was to set appointments for our new CEO with our network. And it was, we went over it in every board meeting. We had a running, you know, tally of who was ahead and who wasn't. And, you know, first place was a, you know, bottle of good bourbon, you know, kind of thing. It was really fun though. And it did engage, you know, a lot of the board members that typically didn't before. So, but yeah, that's a good one. One, I know we're about out of time, but one question, you know, what are you seeing in terms of matched gifts and leveraging key donor gifts to use in an appeal to others? So, you know, what are you seeing in terms of matched gifts and leveraging key donor gifts to use an appeal to use in an appeal to others? Anybody want to kind of comment on that?
So we have always had to create that environment for a match. In some cases, talking to a donor about what their gift might be, and if it's a large gift or a corporation, letting them know that we're willing to drive a matching campaign. So we'll be lifting up one giver for the gift size that they provided, and then campaigning to match it fully. And I think that's very possible, and still in this environment, it's just creating that space where you develop a sense of urgency and help the community to track your progress toward the ultimate goal. And if it is toward a 50 or 100K match or whatever it might be, that's even better because everyone can now participate.
Yeah, it's great. All right, well, we're about out of time. Again, I want to thank everybody for hanging on. Really appreciate it. Panelists, thank you so much for taking the extra time this morning. Really appreciate it. I know you get busy roles. So we'll let you go, and thanks again to our sponsors and partners. We really appreciate it, and thanks again to our audience. We really appreciate all the feedback, questions, chats, all that good stuff. So thanks again. Have a great rest of your week, and thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Tim. Paul, Harvey. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.